Talk a little about your first book, Against Capitulation. It was early 80s, I guess it came out? And it looks at some of the same issues, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think they're like bookends, as it were.
Yeah, well,
you know, I mean, Against Capitulation, 1981, I think it came out, and this one, and they have some of the same elements in them.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking earlier about my generation in the U.S., but I think worldwide, actually, the generation of the '60s, being a generation that was consciously, unconsciously devoted to the future.
I just saw a piece about the 1964-65 World's Fair. Someone has done another book or a documentary or some film or something about it, and once again, seeing, and I had been reminded. I went to it, of course.
I too.
The world of tomorrow.
Right.
Everything was about this future in which everyone was going to be friends. Everything was going to get along.
That's true.
Everyone was going to.
The future was going to be fabulous.
Yeah. But
also, I think, again, I suppose this is always true, right? The revolutionaries are the 18-year-olds, not the 65-year-olds, or with obviously with the three exceptions or whatever it is, the people who've been revolutionaries since they were 18 until they're 65, but because everything's going to be possible. And it's a great impulse. I mean, I think that
But it was particularly strong, I'm saying, when you were coming of age, and
it was particularly, yeah. I mean, first of all, it was the 60s,
yeah,
which was strong for everybody. And of course, it was particularly strong for me. But at around that time, my wife gave birth to a child. And I had never had any sense of what the relationship between where I'd come from and who I was might be until then.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason for that was that my mother in particular, who was the force in my family, had turned her back completely on where she had come. When we got to the U.S., she never looked back. She kept no relationship.
Mementos, letters.
She never
Nothing.
spoke. If she happened, somehow something came up about people back home, she would make some withering remark about them. But when my daughter Kelly was born, she began to talk about her experience, not only back in Slovakia, but of having me at that age, having a baby in the Holocaust. So I began to think about what that was and what my relationship to Slovakia was. And it was in that kind of...
And you were the baby.
And I was the baby, absolutely.
So
right.
Part of your identity was there that you hadn't looked at. Yeah.
That I hadn't looked at all.
Yeah.
Because I'd been looking forward. So now I had to look back. And I went back, literally, to what was then still Czechoslovakia. It's sort of on a two-edged trip. As I say, I happened to have met Philip Roth at that time. He was very involved with people in the Czech resistance, and he wanted me to go visit Ivan Klima, Czech novelist. So I partly went to look all these people up.
And you carried a letter from Roth to Klima, did you know?
Not a letter.
Oh.
No, a message.
Just conveyed.
Yeah.
A message, yeah.
Klima was in trouble. Klima was a leading kind of member of the resistance, and it was dangerous. And Roth was worried about him, and and Klima had previously, during that brief window when it was possible to leave the country, had been, I think, at Michigan for maybe 6 months or so, and Roth
Teaching.
teaching, and Roth had obtained for him a position at Bucknell, and wanted me to tell him that he had that he had a job at Bucknell. If he wanted to have it, he
What
could
came
leave.
of this?
Klima didn't want to leave. Klima said, "Thank Philip, but I write in Czech. I can't leave the language."
Yeah.
In effect, he said, and he stayed.
I felt that moving from the Upper West Side to New Rochelle. So, leaving
I
the
mean,
language.
it's
But in any case,
I mean, those guys were pretty amazing.
yes.
Uh,
So, just for the people who might be watching this who don't know, I mean, the Czechoslovakia was one of the Eastern European countries and
Right.
was a Soviet satellite state,
Right.
and had something called the Czech Spring, yeah, in 1968.
Prague Spring.
Prague Spring, right? And
Also,
akin to what happened in Hungary in '56, the Russians marched in. I know in Czechoslovakia they used Polish troops, and my first wife's father was a Czech, displaced person, and he took the Polish ham in the fridge and threw it out into the backyard. But in any case, they marched in and put it down, and there was this sort of repressed, resistance that continued on
Right.
into the late '70s, early '80s, and then there was what Lech Walesa in Poland was the first sort of successful, I guess you would say,
Right. Popular uprising.
uprising, and it spread to other countries, including
Right.
Czechoslovakia, which were quite ripe for it, and had been working for it all that time. So Klima and Kish, Danilo Kish was, they were all part of this scene.
Klima, definitely, not Kish so much. So
No?
Kish. So Kish was what we would have called once upon a time a Yugoslav, but
Oh, that's right. He wasn't Czech. Yeah, that's right.
no, he was well, it's hard to
With
say
a
what he was.
Hungarian name, yes.
So in Kish's case, his father was Hungarian. His mother was from Montenegro. His father's family was Jewish. His father was shipped off to the camps and killed. His father's father had changed the family name to the Hungarian name, which is Kish, to disguise the Jewish name.
And this name changing thing is also a big part of
Yeah,
your own life and a lot of the lives that you look at in the
and
book.
very representative of the whole bit, right?
Mhm.
There's this great section in Book of Laughter and Forgetting, Milan Kundra's novel, I still think his best novel myself, where he has his character Tamina, and he has a whole paragraph about where she's from, and it's this street, and the street name is changed, like every decade, obliterating the past,
Mhm.
so that you can't figure out who the hell you are and where you come from.
Know where you come from, yeah.
So yeah, the name changing is very, I guess, Central European,
Yeah.
where every time the victor changed
One
all
of the
names.
charming anecdotes in the book is your mother's decision to change the family
yes.
name from Weiss or Weiss to, Rachel Weiss insists on being called Weiss, and she
Is that right?
get on the radio with old Leonard Lope before he got fired. And he kept saying Weiss, and she kept saying Weiss, and over and over and over. It was, and she could tell she was getting annoyed because he couldn't get it in his head. But anyway, to Webb, because then you have a smooth sailing, none of this foreign stuff, but leaves you as Igor.
Yes.
Which to Americans of your generation is the guy with the humpback in the Frankenstein movies,
Right.
At best.
And it never seems to have entered their minds. I mean, the whole thing was totally unnecessary. But I mean, I guess, it was extremely disruptive in my life,
Yeah.
right? Because I was Weiss straight through high school. I only became Webb when I went to college.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, secondly, as what was the point of doing this? You have to do it. Call me wife.
Right. Call me. George.
George.
It's Is Igor George? No.
No, I don't know what Igor. Maybe it's George. I don't know. Yuri is George. So
Yerzy is
yeah.
And you published Against Capitulation with a different name.
pseudonym
Yeah.
under Yuri. But I think that but I, clearly she felt, my mother in particular, I don't know, my father just, she just bamboozled him into doing it, this need to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did,
Yeah.
despite the fact that it was irrational and it didn't do anything,
A small aside in the book is your mother made dresses for Zsa Zsa Gabor.
She did.
Just a toss away. You would never think it mattered at all. But see, I remember Zsa Zsa Gabor's dresses. They were,
But she
they were sort
really
of
didn't like
Liberace
Zsa Gabor.
scarves, essentially, is what
Yeah.
they were.
They're these great, yeah, and the shop was on 168th Street and Broadway.
Where
And
Malcolm X was killed.
Sorry?
Malcolm X was killed on that very spot.
Oh, is that right?
In the
I-
ballroom that was on that corner there. It's not a corner. The streets come together.
What I remember about it is the subway stop.
Yeah, that subway stop is a nightmare.
But fabulous.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? These huge arches.
But then getting up out of that thing, those elevators and stairwells.
Yeah, it was a little sweatshop. I mean, I guess it wasn't a sweatshop. Run by a German-Jewish partnership, two women. Everybody in the shop was Jewish. And they made dresses for some store on Madison Avenue. And which had, and so Zsa Zsa Gabor and people like Zsa Zsa Gabor would come and be fitted,
And then the numbers would be run uptown.
And then the numbers would be run uptown.
Except not like the numbers being run uptown by my people, the Italians.
Right. Yes, she made dresses for Zsa Zsa Gabor and Lord knows who else.
That's amazing. So yeah, drawing this line, just cutting off, and she did it with you as well when
Right.
you got to the U.S. By sending you for Catholic CCD training and confirmation,
Right.
First Communion and whatnot.
Yes, I mean my mother. I mean, it's hard to tell, from my family, if anybody learned anything from the Holocaust. As far as I could tell, they came out of it intensified as they were before they went into it.
What does one learn from the Holocaust?
Well, you might rethink your prejudices, for example. But that definitively never happened. And so my mother
Don't tell that to
came
the
out of the
Zionists.
Holocaust and more bitter than she had been. I don't know if she had been bitter before, but she came out more bitter. And so, the whole. I've lost my train of thought here. Where were we going with my
Her
mother?
cutting things off, the change of name,
Ah,
the change of religion, these attempts to
Because
sanitize, obliterate.
her view was that people were shitty, and eventually the shittiness would come out.
And they're going to come to get you.
They're going to come to get you, and hence you want to be as invisible as possible.